We have a very exciting debate organized and planned on the issue of Cape independence. And we're going to be answering and asking some very important questions. Questions like, is the ANC a criminal organization? Or is it just an organization full of criminals?
The ANC has just destroyed everything in this country.
28 years you continue to allow this to happen. We should blame ourselves.
Our people, they lack the education. They don't understand the power that they have of voting out the ANC.
If the government does to you what apartheid has done to you, vote them out. Let's support Mandela.
DA, you're on your way out. You're not going to survive.
If the Western Cape were to secede, can we keep all the wine for ourselves? Why is it called a civil war and not an uncivil war? But more seriously, can the Western Cape secede? Should it do it? Do we still consider ourselves South Africans? Haven't we mentally and emotionally seceded already?
Exiting Cape is an emotional decision.
We have every right to secede. And you know what? We're going to.
Hello, my name is Donald, and welcome to the #1 media company, WorldView. At WorldView, we explore everyone's perspectives on all things that can broaden our worldview.
If it was 2 years ago, this debate would not have taken place, for the simple reason that it was irrelevant. It was a topic that nobody discussed really, but things have changed. Now, I would say there are two basic and very relevant questions if you go into this debate. And the first one would be, why should the Western Cape tolerate the corruption, incompetence, and implosion under the current ANC government that we are seeing in South Africa and that we are experiencing on a daily basis? And the second question would be, is there any benefit for the people of the Western Cape to stay part of a failed state, South Africa, governed by the ANC at this stage? It's not a question why the Western Cape should or should not. The reality is that this idea of for the Western Cape to become independent is going to grow, and it doesn't have to be in conflict with the rest of South Africa. We are moving into a new dispensation, and the only thing that is sure in politics is that everything changes.
The government creates the illusion that they care about the people and that they govern in the best interest of the people. And the people, they create the illusion that we don't see what's wrong in South Africa.
For me, it's a matter of simple math. And I've updated the figures to 2021 figures of a province of 7 million people or 11% of the national population. You then ask, what does that province contribute in terms of tax to the national fiscus? The Western Cape has a total tax base of 62 billion. Gauteng has a tax base of 200 billion. We have 16% of taxpayers who contribute 15% to the fiscus, whereas Gauteng contributes 49% to the fiscus and effectively subsidizes what happens in the Western Cape. Add to that the conditional grant, which is 14 billion. Add to that the local government grant, which is a further, say, about 7 billion. If you can support yourself, then be independent. But while you are dependent on me, there are certain rules that apply in this house. If we are upset, like Vytjie is and like I am about national and the ANC, vote them out, don't secede.
Ebrahim's arguments are all based on the economic situation, saying in terms of the taxes, etc., etc. We will have to have a different discussion on that issue because my figures are completely different from the figures that you have. It's exactly the opposite.
The argument for Cape independence is based upon three incredibly simple and irrefutable truths. Number one, we've got problems. We've got big problems. Unemployment, poverty, crime, inequality, corruption, economic growth, electricity, government debt, bankrupt state enterprises, we could go on. We've got problems. Number two, there's a fundamental difference between how the people of the Western Cape think we should address these problems and how the people of the rest of South Africa think we should address them. And the third truth is that the people of the Western Cape, and here I disagree with Ebrahim's assessment earlier, have an absolute right, a legal right to determine their own future for themselves and decide how and by whom they're governed.
We've been here for 28 years and we never voted for the government that is destroying South Africa.
I strongly believe that the people of South Africa are one And in your documents, you speak about the issue of language as a common language, as one of the unifying things or the criteria that makes it necessary or possible for Cape exit or the Cape to want to secede. The issue of culture also. We share a common culture. There is no particular culture for people that are living in the Western Cape. You speak about the issues of borders, and that intrigued me quite a lot because a family in Kimberley and in Gauteng. So when they want to come to visit me, to see me, it means they must cross into a new country. They must clear custom. They must change currency and be able to visit me. I am not convinced. I want to juxtapose that with millions of South Africans who feel like I do. The solution for a failed state or for a corrupt state, it's not to secede or independence. It is to vote, to work very hard to vote out the corrupt state.
Now, the Western Cape is seriously diverse. We have 3 different official languages. We have people who, as Vytjie has said, have deep roots in other parts of the country. We have a shared history of struggle to build a better nation. But we also have a history of very, very deep division, of a whole battle about identity. Who is a South African? Who is entitled to citizenship? Who can vote? Who can actually call themselves a South African in terms of a national government? These are something we've spent 28 years trying to eradicate, trying to build a common union, trying to build a common identity. To now roll that back and to return to those days of deep division and distrust is completely negative. What we have in the Western Cape is our own constitution, which is not entirely in line with the national constitution. So before we can have a referendum, we need to amend the current constitution. Now, the Premier has indicated that that will happen, but whether or not that means he will then actually accede to having a referendum on this is an entirely different issue. Now, once there actually is a referendum, and if the majority of the Western Cape votes for it, it's not binding on the national government at all. So it doesn't even necessarily mean that is going to happen. Even if it were binding, it would mean when we need to have 2/3 of support in the National Assembly and 6 out of 9 provinces in the NCOP to support it. And then there's the final issue that, frankly, secession is not a provincial matter. It is a national matter, and it affects everybody in this country. It's not just some people in the Western Cape who want to get away from the rest of the country.
So there's currently a bill pending in Parliament that would allow the Premier of the Western Cape to call a referendum. If that bill were to pass, will the Premier call a referendum? I'm just confused as to why. I mean, you're very vocal and you're antagonistic against this entire approach of Cape independence. Why are you then pursuing this independence referendum bill in Parliament?
A referendum on independence is not the only thing that needs to be debated. The DA's view is that what we need to do is devolve powers down to the provinces. And having referendums, although they're not legally binding, would then potentially have persuasive power on various issues.
But will you call a referendum on independence if that bill were to pass?
Well, that would be within the decision of the Premier to make that. I'm not in the provincial government, I'm in the national government.
Okay, thank you. At least you're being honest.
There's this main issue that somehow South Africa can prevent secession. In other words, it doesn't matter what the people of the Western Cape want, because the rest of South Africa can somehow, through the constitution, can prevent that.
For this thing to pass, unfortunately, it can't only be the inhabitants of the Cape, their feelings, their emotions that are the final arbiters.
The constitution is the arbiter between your anger at a particular moment and what is the right values for a society.
If we do referenda, is to looking what people are thinking. Whether or not there would be one on Cape independence is something that would still need to be discussed. And as I've already said to Phil, there is the small issue, you'd actually need to have a majority of people supporting it. And quite frankly, from where I'm sitting, and from the position of the DA, we certainly don't see that happening at this point.
The vast majority of supporters of Cape Exit have in the past voted for the Democratic Alliance. And they must take note of that reality, that what they support, those things are not supported by the DA. So if they've got a problem in 2 years' time with that position, then those voters should just change their allegiance and vote for political parties that support Cape independence and that support the idea of a referendum.
Imagine the EFF comes to power or gets enough power to call a referendum on land expropriation.
Referenda are very emotive. We all know that. The EFF, we know, has got an ability to whip emotions. Tomorrow, it might not only be the issue of land, it might be the issue of open our borders.
Vytjie, you've just now said that we should be careful of referendums because who knows, the EFF may come with a referendum to open the borders. I don't want to burst your bubble. The borders have been open for 28 years.
Vytjie says, well, if you don't like the government, vote it out. Well, for 28 years, we never voted it in. We're trying to vote it out. We've tried for 28 years to vote it out. We can't because the system is fixed and we cannot vote them out because the rest of South Africa, who's more populous than us, dictates who the government is and we get to swallow what's left. Fix South Africa. Well, who are we trying to fix South Africa? We can't fix South Africa because South Africa's going backwards. But we can fix the Western Cape. We're going to devolve powers. What powers have you devolved? You can't even get control of the police. You've asked for control of the police, and the police minister says, no, we're not going to give it to you. We want to fix the railways. No, you can't have it. You can't even get the basic powers. If we can't dictate that and govern the province according to the ideology that the people of voters of the province want, we can't fix it.
Before 1994, the ANC said to the National Party, we want one person. At that stage, it was one man, one vote. Now it's one person, one vote. And we want a Bill of Rights in a unitary state. What did the National Party say? No, cannot be done. It's not in line with the Constitution. We will not accept it. What did the ANC do? Did you say because they say it can't be done, you've relinquished your ideal? No. You struggled even more so.
That's very kind of you, Corné. I think you want the right to reply. But then, if the ANC itself is worried about, and I'm not giving inside secrets, about what will happen in 2024, they know December 22 is the watershed and 2024 election is the crossroads. What is absent is the political strategy that we used against the National Party.
Apart from blaming the poor, that because they get food parcels and 350, some of them, around every election, what have we done? Those of us that has the means, the might, and the capability to demand the change of the electoral system so that it delivers that which we want it to deliver to all of us.
What is very, very concerning is when you go, and I'm on Scopa at Parliaments, we go to a lot of the smaller municipalities that have the most appalling audit records. They really are shocking. But what happens come the election? The people who are there, who are suffering under that municipality, vote for the ANC again because they don't see alternatives or they don't really possibly understand that alternatives can happen. What we need to do, rather than destroying the system, is quite frankly to work to educate people across the country as to what the alternatives are. And there are several alternatives.
It confirms a lingering doubt about what we are dealing with. We're all familiar with the voortrekkers. I'm worried about the idea of independence being for the terugtrekkers. But it puts a particular onus on the independents to de-racialize and to non-racialize. And that is the test that you have to pass.
This isn't a movement of white people. This is a movement of people from the Western Cape, which has multiracial support, and it would be dependent upon a democratic mandate from the majority of the people in the Western Cape. The rest of South Africa is governed by the government it voted for. And if they've made stupid choices, and they clearly have, then they have to be responsible for their own choices. They can't drag us down with them. We have 7 million people, and we have to uplift those, and they're coloured and they're black and they're white, and those 7 million people need to be governed according to their democratic will so they can be lifted out of poverty, so they aren't living in shacks, they aren't unemployed, they don't have terrible education, healthcare and all of the issues that they're suffering with as human beings who deserve better.
At the end of the day, the only poll that matters is the one that happens at the ballot box. And quite frankly, in the eyes and the minds of the people of Cape Town, the Cape Independence Party and Cape Exit are the same grouping. One can say one's a non-political, which is debatable, non-political party. One can say one's a pressure group. At the end of the day, in the eyes of the voter in the ballot box, it is considered to be the same.
To make sure that 2022 is a decisive year, is reg of weg. I even think that there will be sufficient black voters who may be so disillusioned that they may make an alternative choice. At this point, I don't think you are part of that choice menu.
The racist ship has sailed. Stop that nonsense.
When you come to the election in 2024 on the national level, if the ANC goes below 50%, and that's going to happen, with whom are the ANC going to form a coalition? We don't know. Is it going to be the radical faction that forms that coalition with the EFF? That's the moment when Mr. Malema will step up and say, I can put the ANC back into government for a further term. Deputy President Malema, Minister of Finance Floyd Shivambu. And there we go. Let me conclude.
It's been decided, it's clear. The rest of South Africa cannot prevent secession, it can negotiate it, and the constitution, whatever the provisions are, cannot be used to wipe out the democratic will of the Western Cape people.